So that kind of piqued our interest a little bit. And then there was also a Nobel Prize-winning economist, William Nordhaus, who did this really interesting study about the price of light. And he said, let's look at what it costs you to earn the money to buy 1 hour's worth of light. And you can measure light in lumens. And so he does this study, and this light is just doing this.
Yeah, well, you said in your book that it's so amazing to think of this, is that 100-watt electric light bulb is the equivalent in terms of light generation of 17,000 candles. I mean, that's a lot of candles. And then you made some comment too about how much labor in terms of time it took to burn that many candles. And you can imagine, even now, 17,000 candles, especially if they're made of beeswax or something like that, that's not inexpensive.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you go back to we go back to 1800, and it took you had to work 3 hours to earn the money to buy 1 hour worth of light. And so the time price was 3 hours for 1 hour. Today, it's like 0.166 seconds of time to earn that same light. So
we want to point out what this means too, because prior to the dawn of inexpensive light, and also this obtains in many places in the world now, the fact that there was no light seriously delimited the number of hours you could spend working. And so when you're buying light, you're not just buying light, you're buying time to be productive. You can't read without light. You can't write without light. You can't, it's hard for people to imagine this, because we're never plagued by darkness ever anymore, ever. And, maybe we suffer from the absence of the night sky, and I think we do, but light is basically free. And that means that we have many more hours per day. The other thing that really struck me in that regard, it wasn't your work though, but many people have commented on this, is the absolutely revolutionary consequence of inventing eyeglasses for people, because many people in medieval Europe, obviously across the world, had to do close work like tailors. And when they lost their ability to see close, like you do when you need reading glasses, they couldn't work anymore. And so this simple technological innovation of glasses, it added 15 years of productivity to people's lives. And then light, well, that adds 4 hours of productivity per day, and it's free. We see, one of the things I really like about your work is that you help me understand and communicate to people just how rich we are. We're so rich, we don't even know how rich we are.
Well, that's right. I think, you talked about light and productivity, which is, of course, very important. But if you didn't have light, you didn't have anything else. I mean, there was no entertainment. Obviously, there was nothing on TV. There were no TVs. As you said, you couldn't read. Most people lived in absolute poverty, so they really couldn't afford a candle. And therefore, once the sun set, you just went to bed.
In the cold.
And so Gail mentioned the concept of time price, and I think it's very important that we explain it in greater depth.
So here's the deal. We buy things with money, but we really pay for them with our time. So there are money prices and there are time prices, and it's pretty easy to convert a money price to a time price. You just take the money price and you divide it by hourly income. So for example, if something costs $20 and you're earning $20 an hour, the price of that is 1 hour. So money prices are expressed in dollars and cents. Time prices are expressed in hours and minutes. And this offers, a number of features. First of all, we go to this universal standard of time. And it's not, you can't counterfeit it, you can't inflate it. It's this constant flow. So everybody recognizes what an hour is. We have this kind of perfect equality of time. We get 24 hours a day.
Yeah, and that's independent of any real sociocultural differences. It's because, right. Well, we all suffer from the same degree of finitude in some sense. And so, yeah. And I'm amazed. Well, I can't believe this. I know that it's a very tricky business for any academic enterprise to get its fundamental units of measurement correct. It's of absolutely crucial importance that be done, like the periodic table of the elements for chemists, for example. and maybe the 5-factor personality model for psychologists, and IQ as well. These fundamental measurements. And so, but it is kind of surprising to me that you economist types didn't figure this out until recently. Like, what was in the way?
Well, Julian Simon had kind of figured it out, and actually Adam Smith talked about this in his Wealth of Nations. He talked about the fact that we have to buy things with our labor, which is really our time. And, you know, the other feature of time, I think we've got 7 universal standards of measurement. 6 of those 7 all go back to time. So we're trying to move the thinking back to this universal standard of time. So once you've established a time price, then it's the comparison of that time price over time. You know, it cost me 1 hour a year ago. Today, it only cost me 45 minutes. You know, so the percentage change in that time price is really what we should look at. And then it's the ratios that we look at. If something goes 75% off, for example, it's like, okay, 75% off, that's interesting. That means for the time that it used to take to earn 1 unit, now I get 4. Mm-hmm. So going from, it's a 75% decrease, but you think about it the other way, it's actually a 300% increase in your abundance, because I used to get 1, now I get 4.
Right. And there's a moral claim. There's a moral claim here too that we should be very careful to make explicit, I would say, which is, if we've accepted the proposition that something is worth having, it's useful and justifiable to assume that if we can produce that more efficiently, that's good. Right? Those two things seem to go right together. So, because I think when you're trying to nail down something like fundamental measurement, you have to nail it down all the way to the ground. If we agree that there are good things to have, so we have good and have as agreements, then we're also going to agree that if we can get good things to have with less expenditure of the most fundamental resource, that also constitutes a good. And that would be partly because, well, there are lots of good things we like and need to have. And so if we have more time, we can get more of them too. So there's really no way of subverting this claim, I would say, if you accept the initial proposition that there are good things that, you know, we can and should have.
Yeah, exactly. So once we kind of got this time price figured out and said, you know, we should take all of these prices that we have and convert them to time prices and then see what happens. So we go back to Simon's original bet. We're kind of inspired by that. And one of the critiques of Simon's work was, you know, you were just lucky, Simon, because it was only for 10 years and it was only for 5 commodities. And so